All right, let's talk about something we all do: overthinking. You know, that mental hamster wheel that just won't stop spinning. But here's the thing: we're going to look at this not as some personal flaw, but as a biological process. It's basically a feature of your brain's operating system that we can actually understand and, believe it or not, learn to work with. So let's jump right in. Man, this quote just hits home, doesn't it? That feeling is universal. It's that moment your brain refuses to switch off and you're just trapped replaying the same thoughts over and over. It's totally exhausting, it feels completely pointless, and it happens to pretty much everyone. So, what's the deal here? What's really going on inside your head when this happens? I can tell you it's not just about a lack of willpower. There are specific brain structures and chemicals firing off, turning your mind into this relentless feedback loop. So let's start our tour of the brain and find out what's going on under the hood. Okay, our first stop is the command center, kind of like the executive suite of your mind. This is where a few key players are seriously working overtime. So let's meet the prefrontal cortex, or PFC for short. It's right behind your forehead, and it's basically the CEO of your brain. Its whole job is to solve complex problems, make good decisions, and, stop you from doing impulsive things. When it's working right, it is your greatest asset for navigating life. But when you're overthinking, this is what's happening to your brain's CEO. It gets stuck. It goes into overdrive, running simulations for every single possible negative outcome. So instead of making a clear decision, it just gets paralyzed, trapped in this mental boardroom analyzing 1,000 different what-ifs. That feeling of being mentally stuck, that's this right here. Now, let's introduce the second key player in this drama, the amygdala. This part of your brain is way more ancient, way more primal. Think of it as your internal alarm system. Its one job, its only job, is to scan for danger and slam the alarm button, kicking off that classic fight or flight response to keep you safe. And this is where it gets a little wild. Your amygdala, well, it hasn't really gotten a software update for the 21st century. It literally cannot tell the difference between a real physical threat, like a tiger in the grass, and a modern psychological one, like a weird text message. It triggers the exact same high-alert panic signals, flooding your system with anxiety over something that is absolutely not a life or death situation. This all brings us to two different networks that are kind of competing in your brain. Think of them as different operating modes. When your mind is wandering, thinking about yourself, dwelling on the past, or worrying about the future, your default mode network, the DMN, is running the show. This is basically the home of overthinking. The opposite of that is the task positive network, or TPN. That one kicks in when you're focused on something outside of yourself, like working on a puzzle or just listening to a friend. The trouble is, for overthinkers, that DMN can get really sticky. It's hard to switch out of it and get back to the real world. So we've looked at the hardware, the brain's structures. But what's actually fueling this whole engine? Let's dive into our next section and check out the powerful chemical cocktail that's brewing inside. Okay, just think of your brain's activity like a car. Glutamate is your gas pedal. It's the main accelerator, an excitatory neurotransmitter that gets all your brain cells revved up and firing. On the other side, you've got GABA. GABA is the brakes. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter that tells your brain, hey, slow down, chill out. To have a smooth ride, you obviously need a good balance between the two. Right, now here's the problem. Things like chronic stress, constant worrying, even just not getting enough sleep. All of that can actually drain your brain's supply of GABA. This means you have way less of that crucial brakes chemical. So your foot is essentially floored on the accelerator, with glutamate just running wild. This is the biological reason you get that awful, wired but tired feeling. Your body is totally exhausted, but your brain just cannot shut up. So you might be asking yourself, why? Why is my brain even wired this way to begin with? It seems like a terrible design, right? Well, let's take a look at the evolutionary reason for all this worry. I love this quote because it just nails a core concept, the negativity bias. See, our ancestors who survived were the ones who were constantly on the lookout for threats. The caveman who worried about the rustle in the bushes was the one who didn't get eaten. So we've literally evolved to have brains that cling to negative thoughts, like Velcro, and let the positive stuff slide right off, like Teflon. It was a brilliant survival feature, but in our world today, it's often more of a bug. And that brings us to the biggest problem of all, this fundamental mismatch. We are running ancient Stone Age survival software in a completely different modern world. This table lays it all out perfectly. Just take a look. An ancient physical threat, like a predator. is now replaced by a modern trigger, like a critical email from your boss. The ancient social threat of being exiled from your tribe, which was basically a death sentence, is now replaced by the fear of getting rejected on social media. But here's the kicker. Your brain triggers the exact same high-stakes, primal stress response for both. It doesn't know the difference. And of course, modern life just pours gasoline on this fire. First, we have information overload, which keeps our brains constantly distracted and on edge. Then there's the paradox of choice, where having too many options completely paralyzes our PFC, just like that CEO trapped in the boardroom. And the worst one? Meta-worry. That's when we start worrying about the fact that we're worrying. It creates this nasty feedback loop that is so hard to break out of. Okay, so that's the why. It all sounds a bit bleak, I know. But don't worry, because now we get to the good part, the how. How can we actually start to retrain our brain? Let's open up the toolkit. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. The goal here is not to fight your brain or to try and force yourself to just stop thinking. I mean, that's impossible, right? The real goal is to learn how to become a better guide for your own mind, to gently steer it away from those destructive loops and back to what's actually happening right here, right now. Here is a fantastic, super practical tool you can use anytime, anywhere. It's the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. You just go through your senses one by one. And by forcing your brain to focus on external stuff, what you see, feel, hear, you're actively pulling it out of that internal overthinking default mode network and switching it into the external, focused, task-positive network. It's basically a neurological circuit breaker for your brain. And here are 3 more heavy hitters for your toolkit. First, cognitive labeling. Just saying the phrase, "I'm having the thought that," creates a little bit of space between you and the thought. It puts your rational brain back in charge. Second, the worry window. You literally schedule a time to worry. This tells your brain, hey, we'll deal with this later so it doesn't have to hijack your entire day. And finally, physical movement. Getting up and moving is one of the fastest ways to burn off all those stress chemicals and just hit the reset button on your entire system. If you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this quote right here. You aren't broken. You're not crazy for overthinking. What you have is an incredibly powerful survival machine that is just operating on a really outdated manual for the world we live in today. The goal here is self-compassion, not beating yourself up. So, our tour is complete. You've seen the brain structures, you've seen the chemicals, you've seen the ancient programming that's running in the background. You basically have the blueprint. So the final question is for you. Now that you understand how it all works, what's the first step you're going to take to give your brain a new set of instructions?